Today, I'm going to take this opportunity. First of all, I apologize. I like to greet the guys that just celebrated their Easter this week. So if I didn't have a chance, this is my chance to greet you with Happy Easter, even if it's a little late. In Israel, we're still in the midst of celebrating Passover. Most of the country is still in holiday. Coffee milk is shut down, most of it for the holiday. Just a few nutcases like us are working. Today, we're going to discuss the milking efficiency, but from a prospect of a sales tool. Sorry, guys. During my presentation, I will touch a few times on this point of how we use milking efficiency for a sales tool. I will discuss it later because in the beginning, it's going to look to most of you as if you're talking or doing application training here and not a sales training. So please be patient and we'll start move through the presentation and then you'll get to understand what I mean. All businesses, not farms only, are always looking for the leaks in their business. They're looking to find out where they are losing money. There are many places and many directions to look into that, to see where they are losing money. And we're going to try to help them today to do that. There are a few areas that by using Affimilk system, the sensors, the software, mostly the software that collect the data from the sensor, that we can help your customers to improve their bottom line, minimize the leak, help them make more money if it's in the form of herd planning, evaluating fertility or feed, welfare, labor, and health. During the previous presentation, we touched more on some of these aspects, looking on detection of fertility, detection of sick cows, and even touched a little bit on the financial aspect of these capabilities. Every dairyman in the world likes to improve his bottom line. Some of them are right now only looking to improve and stop their leaks, while others are looking already in a position to squeeze a little more out of their business. And in this presentation today, I'm going to discuss some of these things, and we're going to touch on them into both of these type of dairymen. Those who want to stop big leaks and those that already stopped most of their leaks and want to improve. I'm not going to talk today about stuff that's going on out of the parlor, only looking into the parlor. This is the focal of this presentation. If you come to think about the central place that the parlor is playing, you will quickly come to understand how important this is. On every dairy farm, after all, with everything that they do, the peak, the climax of everything that's going on is actually the milking, harvesting the product. When they grow feed in the field, when they make silage, when they buy feed, when they treat cows, inseminate cows, when they monitor things with the baby calves, or even fixing a tractor, all come to a climax in the milking parlor. And when we evaluate the cost of this piece of equipment, if you may, by square meter even, take the total cost of every parlor that you know of, divide it into the size of it by square meters, and then compare it to other systems on the farm, you quickly will come to the conclusion that this system, the milking parlor, is by far the most expensive on the farm. And that is why the dairymen, your customers, would like to maximize its efficiency to as much as he can. And we need to be able, of course, to help him to do that. That is why we consider, and looking on this piece of machine, even if I make it sound very simple, to this amazing system, the heart, beating heart of the dairy farm. Why are we measuring milk, guys? Think about it. We already discussed some of these reasons in previous presentation. By monitoring milk and milking, we're capable, of course, using our sensor and our software to be able to detect a health problem not only very accurately, but quickly and early. And we already discussed how important this thing is for the dairyman. Monitoring the milking, monitoring the milkers, and making sure that they are using the proper milking protocol is crucial to be able to milk the cows properly and prevent other health problems such as mastitis. And your dairymen know that. And by collecting all this data, production and quality of milk, components, etc., the dairymen have enough data not only to evaluate cows' profitability, but also be able to improve it by improving genetic and such to make his cows more profitable. I just put just for a sidekick to remind you what we're talking about. This is a very famous picture by the Dutch painter Van Gogh. He actually, if I remember correctly, painted it while he was in France, and that is why the French name on the picture. For those of you who does not speak French, I will help you by quickly use my French capability. Maria from Romania helped me here to translate the name, and this is the name of his picture. Yeah, of course, just joking. We're going to talk about the parlor. We're going to talk today about the milkers in the parlor. We're talking today about milking parlor and the people in the parlor, evaluate them to make sure that cows are being milked properly. Everybody is aware, I mean, everybody I'm talking about, your customer knows how important it is, but all of you need to know how important it is to milk the cows properly. And we already mentioned it a few times, how important it is to do it. And I'll keep repeating it because this is the thing that we're doing here. And why it is, prevent over milking, minimize milking time, and minimizing damage by doing things wrong. After all, when these animals were placed on earth, I leave it to each one of you with his belief and thought, how they made it to earth. They are originally designed not to be milked by a liner, by silicone or rubber. They supposed to be milked by a calf. He supposed to put his lips around the teat and lick it and make it let milk down. In the old days, when people just start milking cows, even by hand, they had some time to place the baby calf of this cow next to its mother before they could milk her. Otherwise, the cow wouldn't let the milk down. And of course, over the years, the dairymen were able to develop and improve the cows to a point that they don't need the calves there. But they still understand how important it is to imply and implement and exercise a proper protocol to allow good stimulation that will cause the cow to let milk out good and fast. And fast is critical because the more we minimize the contact of the rubber or silicone with the teeth to only the necessity, the better it is for the teeth and its health. Cows that have been overmilked unnecessarily are suffering from teeth end damage that usually end up with a lot more mastitis cases, high bacteria count, high somatic cell, and so on. Look on this milk curve graph. Very typical graph. This is the milk curve report that I'm going to go into in a minute or two and work on. This was taken from a farm a couple years ago, but make no difference. Somewhere over the world, again, doesn't make a difference where. When you open this milk curve, for those of you that are familiar with the graph, they right away can see a few problems without knowing where the farm is, which cows are being milked here, how big the parlor is, how many milkers are in the parlor, and what their milking protocol is. Only by looking on the graph, we can spot right away a few issues at hand right here. Allow me just to add my pointer to help me point some of these problems. The graph we're watching here of the milk curve is a picture created by Afi Farm based on the data collected for this specific milk session. It's a picture of the numbers collected from all the cows that have been through the parlor in this milking. We see here how milk flow started from the point of touching the machine and start going up towards the peak climate at the peak of the milk curve, and then start declining towards the end of the milking for each cow. Normally, we expect to see a line that continue and follow my pointer in a direct line to the peak somewhere around the 2 minutes, and then declining towards the end of milking. At the bottom of the graph, we see time in seconds. On the left, we see the flow rate, kilogram per minute. The red lines indicates problem. The first one right here, a big problem. We call this phenomena, a very unfortunately known phenomena, milking by modality. You can see it on your own if you visit a milking parlor. When you're looking on the milking clothes, right after milkers put machine on cows, sometimes you see that milk start flowing out of the udder into the claw, and after a few seconds, suddenly it stop for a few seconds. Right here, it stop, and therefore flow decline, and then after a few more seconds, it's resume and start flowing again. This is abnormality, a bad one, because during this period of time, we have seconds that the liner keep massaging the teeth, trying to suck milk out of it, but no milk is coming out. And every dairyman or milking specialist, veterinarian, and so on will tell you that this kind of phenomena going to cause eventually to teeth end damages. The liner is trying to suck milk out of the teeth, but no milk is coming out. And then the graph keep climbing as milk flow increase towards the climax at the peak. We want the climax to be somewhere around the 122nd, the 2 minutes up here. So in this specific farm, the climax is later, which already indicate another problem, number 2. And also the peak is not high enough. It's too low. How high it should be? Well, wait, we will discuss it in this presentation. And then the flow keep declining and going down towards the point where milk stop coming out of the cow teeth. And at that point right here, the automatic takeoff should kick in and remove the machine. How soon should you remove it? As soon as possible, because we already talked about
Dat zie je niet. En dat vind ik
damages
die
caused.
maakgrafie, hoe het hij
Guys,
maakt.
please mute your
Dank je, niet aan de
microphone.
boer.
Mute your
Als het
microphone.
slecht maakt.
And right here at the bottom, we want to see.
Voor de maaltijd.
Guys, somebody out there got his
Hallo?
microphone open.
Ja.
Romeler.
Allemaal. Zo rap. En heb je nog iets van oefeningen?
Guys, please.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
he
I've
can't
always
see. He's
been
not
foul.
even looking. He's speaking on the phone with his video on. Now he did. He muted.
Okay. Thank you, Yoni. Let's continue. So as I said, at the end of milking, when the milk flow go below a certain level, and that level we are considering to be under 1 kilogram per minute flow rate. We measure how long it's been going on, and I will talk about it. And then the automatic takeoff need to take the machine off as soon as possible. In this specific farm, just by looking on the graph, I can tell that the takeoffs are not removing the machine as soon as possible. When we start working with this specific farm, we were able to work on their protocols, improve it, and make the needed changes. And it didn't take very long to move them towards this graph. We're looking on a graph from the same farm. Again, I'm not going to share with you where the farm is, what size, etc. It's irrelevant. Just point out that to improve from one graph to the other, if you have a good milking crew, a cooperative manager, it can be done and doesn't usually take very long. So everything is great. We had a bad milk curve. We explained what was wrong about it, and we improved it. But the question that's going to be asked here, of course, is how I do this. How we move from one graph to the next one, and this is going to be the focal of this presentation. Before we even go there, some of you, especially, let's say, the salespeople or maybe even technical people that don't usually deal with application, training of software, and so on, may ask themselves, am I wasting my time this morning logging in and listening to Amir, blah, 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 about milking efficiency when it's not my cup of tea? this is not my responsibility to talk and train. Why the hell he called that a pre-sale or even a sales presentation when it sounds to me like he's actually talking to application people? Guys, what you're going to learn in this webinar is the power that stand behind this amazing tool, the Milk Curve evaluation. And the power in this point is just not just from a managerial point of view, but also from a sales point of view. Because before we sell the system to the dairyman, you guys need to convince them in the power and the benefit of buying it. And that is what I'm going to show you today. I hope that at the end of this webinar, you will be able to take my presentation, listen to the recording again and again at home, learning, and be able to present it to potential customers to teach them the big secret. And the secret going to be, and I hope I will be able to convince you at the end of this presentation, that the farmer who is going to use this system with the amazing software will be able to monitor what's going on in his parlor without the need of watching boring video coming out of camera placed in the parlor, sitting hours in front of a monitor and watching the recording of a boring video, without, or not without, but minimizing the need of his presence in the parlor. He doesn't need to be there all the time. And also remember, when a dairyman walks into his parlor, I'm sure that right away all the milkers are going to do exactly what they are expected. But we need to be able, or he need to be able to watch them when he's not there, and they're acting normally, the way they would act when he's out of the parlor. And that's what this system is capable of doing, alerting the dairyman that he have a problem and where the problem lays. So let's get started, and I'll get back to this point at the end, and we'll see, based on your feedback, of course, when you guys start asking questions, if I was capable of convincing you. The report we're going to use, as I mentioned, is the milk curve deviation. It is located in that dashboard. This is the parlor monitoring dashboard. When the ABC dashboard is open, if you click on the milk tab, it will take you immediately into this dashboard. And the one that we're going to use located at this corner, you see it right here. I enlarge it for you. And when you click on the blue triangle on the corner here, it will open the milk curve report, which I'm going to do right now. So before we do it, I want you to write down in your notebook this statement. I didn't invent it. I heard it years ago, somewhere along the way, and fell in love with it because it's so true and so accurate. Think about this statement. If you can measure it, you can manage it. A farm that doesn't collect any data is relying only on the gut feeling of its worker and maybe their magical capabilities to detect early problems. But somebody who collects data and use good software to evaluate the data can do good evaluation, good management of the data and his farm. And therefore, anything on the farm, if it can be measured, it can be managed. If we measure milk and conductivity, we can find cows with mastitis early and we can manage it. If you're using AFI-Lab, we can find cows with ketosis early and the farm can manage it. And the same is true for managing the data, collecting the data from the milking parlor, evaluating it, which we're going to do in a second, and then the dairyman will be able to manage his parlor and his milker in a better way. When we open the milk curve report, that's what it looked like. I open here a different milk curve from what you saw earlier. I picked up a farm, make no difference where and when and how big this farm is. I'm going to enlarge it in a minute, but I just want to give you a quick overview so you understand. On the top of the report, when you open it in Afifarm, you see each line is a session. Each line is a session that collect the data from all the cows that visit the parlor during that session, during that milking. You see the date on one side, and then some information. I will enlarge it in a second so you will see it better. The graph on the bottom is just a graphical picture of the flow rate, this section in the parlor. Don't worry, guys. Don't be overwhelmed, worried, or confused. We're going to go over every little bitty detail of what you see and talk about it. By looking on this graph, I right away see 5 problems without knowing a thing about this farm, about the milkers, about the protocols, where the sun rise, in from which direction, and what's the name of the guy who bring them their food. The first one is right here in the beginning of milking. You see there's a little decline in the flow of the milk, which indicate that at the beginning of milking, which we call low flow time, beginning of the milking, the milk doesn't go up, the flow of milk doesn't go up straight, shoot up straight up as we would expect it. And the reason for this normally is bad prep procedure. The second one, we already discussed in the other graph we looked at, by modality. So the milk flow start climbing to a peak here, and then stop and decline, and then start go up again. So by modality. The next one is that we see that the peak is past the 2 minutes, the 120 second, somewhere around 140, 150. And the peak is also not high enough. So 1, 2, late peak, 3, low peak, 4. And at the end of milking, again, low flow at the end of milking, which we call this one low flow time at removal, is also too long. So we're going to start evaluate all these problems and find not only the problem, but also the source, and then come up with recommendation. To do that, I click on the Design tab of the report and set up the report to show me the last 20 days of data. Remember, I'm setting up to watch the last 20 days of data. I'll touch in a minute of the importance of looking on a lot of data. Once I set it up to show me the last 20 days of data, I have an option here, and I'm not going into training how to do that, but just explaining you that I can set up the report to show me at the bottom a sub-summary. A sub-summary, which you see right here, which means it's an average of all the last 20 days milking data. Why I'm using 20 days, and if I use more, it might be even better, and I'm not going and looking over one milking at a time, because I'm trying to take a specific issue, a daily problem that may have occurred during one specific session that may be affected the data, that may distract our accurate evaluation. What I mean, say that somebody, one of the milkers, had a fight with his friend, girlfriend, boyfriend, wife last night before he came to work this morning. So he came to work very upset, annoyed, distracted, not focused, nervous, no patience for cows. He's banging, he's angry, maybe even hitting the cows, not carrying his work properly. Trust me, guys, that's going to show in the report right away. But that's abnormal, that can be dealt on a daily basis when the dairyman is going to start evaluate the farm on a daily basis. I, on the other hand, want to do evaluation of what's going on in the parlor, looking from a bigger picture to see if there are any other major issues here. So the more data we have, the more accurate the averages are going to be to give me the correct picture. If we have good or bad milkers, if you have good or bad protocol, or both, maybe the milkers are good and the protocol is good, maybe the milkers are bad and the protocol is bad. But looking on the graph, we already came to the conclusion that we have a problem. Now we need to find where the responsibility lays, with the protocol, with the milkers, with both. So let's start cracking. So what you see here now, you see enlargement of this report. The title on the top, don't get scared. I will go over all of them. I encourage you to write down my explanation, but regardless, you're going to have this recording and this presentation available. And also for those of you who will ask for, I will be able to share by mail or even other ways, a small Words document that we created. We call it Parlor Dictionary, that also explain in short lines all of these titles. What we're going to do is evaluate the data, and we're looking only on the sub-summary, which is right here at the bottom. Compare it mostly to industry gold standard. There's such a thing, almost the Milker's Bible. Originally was written, of course, in the US. That's where it all started, but it expanded, and today it's shared by experts from all over the world. And the gold standard are something that is accepted by milking experts all over the world. So you see here we have the date, we have session, and as you can see, this farm is milking 3 times a day. Number of cow milk at every session. It's not a small farm, but not a very big farm. And this is the amount of milk produced at every milking. And you see, total of milk for this farm, I already summed it on here on a note on side, 37.3 liter per day. Very nice production. The first title I'm going to evaluate is a very important key KPI in the gold standard. It's percent of milk in the first 2 minutes. The experts are calling requirement of gold industry standard to have at least 50% or more of the milk harvested in the first 2 minutes or less. So we want to see 50% of more of the milk the cows give in the first 2 minutes of milking. It's a good indication if the cows are being milked fast enough. What do we see here? Again, looking on a sub-summary of the last 20 days. You see here that the morning shift, 34.6%, afternoon, 37.2%, and the night shift, 36.4%. All of them, I'm sure you would agree with me, are too low. I hope you agree with me, they're all too low. They have all kind of good excuses maybe for some of them. For example, the morning shift, some of them may tell me they have more milk than the others. Look, 13.8 liters in the morning versus 10.8 liters at night. A lot more milk in the morning. The night shift, some of you understand this, will tell me, hey, it's harder to milk cows at night. They don't like to let the milk out. They're sleepy, they're droopy, and so on, which is all correct. But we also have the gold standard industry based on data collected from millions of cows all over the world. And our experience telling us that we saw farms that produce not only 37.3 liters as you see here, but over 40 liter that we saw them with 60% of the milk harvested in the first 2 minutes. So achieving 50% or more is definitely doable, even for high producing dairy farm. Let's move on to the next KPI. Remember, the conclusion for the percent of milk in the first 2 minutes is that it's low. It's actually very low, around the 34, 37%, and the goal is 50 or higher. AMT stand for actual milking time. The numbers that shows here is in minutes. It's a very funny, and I have to apologize, weird way from Afimilk R&D to present this kind of data. So, okay, 5, it's 5 minutes, yes, but 4.8, what the hell is that? So this is 4 minutes and 80% of a minute. 5.2, it's 5 minutes, and so it's 5 minutes and 20% of the minute. Sorry, guys, I apologize for that strange way that we presented. I hope that in the near future we will be able to correct it and present it properly in a proper way. If you read the literature out there, you will not find anybody that say that the target is 4.5 minutes or less, because there is actually not real gold standard, a number out there for actual milking time. The gold standard is very simple. Lower is better. I'm using a number that we came up with at Afimilk, which is based on our observation on thousands of farms and millions of cows. 4.5 minutes or less for farm that is milking 3 times a day, regardless of production, is a very, very doable target. We saw farms that are doing less than 4 minutes on a very high producing herd, as long as they maintain good milking protocol. So, as I said, it's too long. You see that we see in the morning 5.2 minutes, 5 in the afternoon, and 4.8 in the night. And good correlation, I may point, of milking time and production. The higher the production, the longer the milking, but not a good excuse, as I mentioned already earlier. Now we're moving into the flow rate. The flow rate is divided into 4 sections in the report, but when you look on the graph, and as I mentioned before, the graph is a picture of the numbers that you see here. That's all it is. People like to watch a picture and rather look on that than a table with numbers that may look to some of you like the matrix, excuse me. But always remember that the graph is just the picture of these numbers. So what we see here is the actual measurement coming out of our milk meter of the flow of milk into the meter. That is how we measure it, that it is a good indication of the flow rate of the milk coming out of the cow. I'm sure you will agree with me. We break it down, as I said, to 4 sections, starting from 0 going all the way to 120. And I will point on the graph the sections and give you the gold standard in yellow up here. So the first one is 0 to 15. Again, this one is based on industry gold standard. It's not something I had a vision in the night about. This is industry gold standard coming out straight from that Bible. The requirement, the goal, it's 0.5 to 1.5 kilogram per minute flow rate in the first 15 seconds. What our little farm here has. Morning shift, last 20 days average is 0.5. They barely make it to the minimum. Afternoon shift, 0.45. They didn't even make the minimum. And the night shift, 0.51. So they also barely cross over the minimum. So overall, I would say not good. Morning shift and night shift just hit the bare minimum. Afternoon shift didn't even make that. And even if they made the bare minimum on 2 sessions, we want to be good. We want to be excellent. So we can conclude that these are not good enough. Let's move to the next section. 15 to 30 second section. What's the goal? 1.5 kilogram to 2.5 kilogram per minute flow rate in this section. And what the numbers? Morning shift, 2.43. Excellent, definitely excellent. Look here, 1.5 to 2.5, they almost made it to the maximum requirement. Afternoon shift, 2.19 kilogram per minute, also very good. And the night shift, 180, it's not excellent, but still nice. Overall, for this section, for the 15 to 30, I would say they did very good job. Morning are really, really good. The afternoon also pretty good. The night are not as good as the other two, but still okay. I give them a little break, but very little break, because it's the night shift, and as I mentioned earlier, it is harder to milk cows in the night. Just like us, they want to sleep, somebody wake them up, make them walk into the parlor, sometime going in alleys that are not very well lighted. They walk from darkness into a very lighted parlor. They don't like to be there. So it's really harder to stimulate them and get them to let milk out. Let's move on to the next section. Whoa. We have a big problem right here. We see it in the graph. We see it in the numbers. What's the goal? 2.5 kilogram to 3.5 kilogram per minute in the 30 to 60 second section. And what we get here, morning shift, 1.75. The afternoon shift, 162. And the night, 110. Yes, the morning shift is better than the other two, but all of them are way below the requirement for this section. I tell you what, guys, 2 of them would hardly make it into the previous section. They actually went down. Look, morning shift went from 2.43 down to 1.75. Afternoon shift was 2.19, went down to 162, and the night went from 180 to 110. A very typical bimodality. In my opinion, and I heard a lot of specialists that will agree with me, cows, first of all, you have to remember, not stupid. So when they go to the parlor, when they get in, they know that they're going to be milked. So when they walk into their milking position, they already have some milk in their udder. I truly believe that that milk is here in the 0 to 30 sections. The 2 first sections are a picture of the milk that was already in the udder when the machine was attached to the cow. The next sections and the remaining of this graph are the results of the prep and stimulation. This is milk that the cow is producing while she's being milked. That's why the move from section 2, 15 to 30, to section 3, 30 to 60, is a good indication on how the cow were prepped and stimulated. If the graph continued to climb up, it was done properly. If it's breaking and going down, they probably were not. And this is the case that we see here very clearly. Let's move on. Next section is the 60 to 120, 60 second to 120. The goal, 3.5 to 4.5 kilogram per minute. As you can see all the time, I give the numbers in pounds too. If somebody in his market is using pounds instead of kilogram. So the goal is 3.5 to 4.5. What are we getting here? Morning shift, 316, still below minimum. Afternoon, 327, better than the morning, but still below the minimum, 3.5. Night shift is the lowest, 279, which is way below the minimum requirement. Yes, they went very nicely up from the previous section. You see, from 175 to 316, 162 to 327, 110 to 279, really a big jump, nice jump, but they don't make it to the minimum requirement because of the break, the bimodality that hit them here. And that's why they cannot make it to the requirement. So yes, afternoon is better than the morning and a lot better than the night, but all of them are very bad. As I mentioned earlier, the problem laying right here in the middle at that crucial step where they were expected to go at 15 to 30 seconds to 30 to 60, they were expected to go up, they were expected to go up, and instead they went down. We have a very good indication here that there's a major problem in the way cows are being prepped, the way cows are being stimulated, and that's why we see a major problem with the way they let their milk down. Conclusion for this section, the flow rate section. Look, I was very critical until now, but read my conclusion. If you read the conclusion, I'm not completely negative. And why is that? Because I see a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm sure that it's not the train coming down. And what I'm talking about, guys. First section, 0 to 15, two shifts were low, made it to the minimum but low, and one did make it to the minimum. So overall, they were so-so. Second section, 15 to 30, all very good. Some better, but overall, very good. Guys, mute your microphone, please. Mute your microphone. Somebody's making noises out there. The third section, 30 to 60, all of them are bad. And the last one, again, all of them are very bad. So overall, what I see here very clearly is consistency. All medium, all good, all bad, all bad. Consistent milker. To me, it means that the milkers are actually following the protocol that they were asked to do. And the problem lay with the protocol and not with the milkers. And that's very good news, because all we need to do is find out where the problem is, the protocol is, and improve it. But we have a very disciplined crew here that will help us implement a better protocol. We don't need to replace the people. We don't need to retrain the people or anything. These are good milkers. Let's move on. The next section that we're going to evaluate to continue before we're making a final conclusion and finding the source of the problem is the low flow time. Low flow time, as I mentioned earlier, is a measurement that we take at two periods, at the beginning of the milking, pre-low flow time we call it, and at the end of the milking, which we call low flow time removal, at which during this time, the milk flow is below 1 kilogram per minute, below 1 kilogram per minute. All the experts tell us that this is bad. When the milk flow is below 1 kilogram per minute, we actually need to remove the milking machine from the cow. At the beginning of milking, it's unavoidable. We just put the machine on the cow and now flow is climbing. But we need to make sure that this time going to be as small as possible. What's affecting the pre-low flow time at the beginning of milking? It's mostly the prep protocol, the way the cow was stimulated, and how quickly or slow the milkers are attaching machine to the cow. The low flow time at removal at the end of the milking is mostly affected by two things. If milker is switching and canceling the automatic takeoff and switch it to manual, so they don't allow the milking machine sensor to decide when machine are going to be removed. And then sometimes cows are getting over milked. The other one is the original setting in the AFI control, which we call F2, on time of removal. How fast we want the automatic takeoff to remove the machine. I will touch on it later. The numbers that you see here are in minutes. So the number we're looking on, the total is the low flow time, which is low flow time removal plus pre-low flow time. So if you do 0.93 plus 0.30, you'll get 123. And what 123 mean? 1 minute, and again, 23% of the minute. This is how we measure and calculate it. To make it more clear, here you go again. Pre-low flow at the beginning of milking, mostly affected by the way cows were prepped and stimulated and how milkers are putting the machine on the cows. And low flow removal at the end of milking, mostly affected by if automatic takeoff was canceled or if the F2 setting in AFI control is too high or low enough, both ways. What's the gold standard? Here it is. The gold, and this is industry gold standard, is to be below 1 minute flow rate. 1 minute, 1 minute flow rate. And remember, the time is measured once the flow rate is below 1 kilogram per minute. So how long cow was milking 1 kilogram per minute? This is what we are measuring here and here. And what we see, as I mentioned, we see that we're all three sessions are above 1, which is bad. That's why the red here. And I also indicate here that the major contributor, the bigger contributor of the two, is the low flow time removal here, right here. Yes, there's a problem in the beginning of milking that need to be addressed, but the bigger issue is at the end of milking, which means that the problem lay with too many manual milking. Too many time milkers are canceling the automatic takeoff, and or F2 setting is too high. We will continue evaluating the report, and that will help us determine where the problem is laying, with F2, with manual milking cancellation, or both. So let's do that and find out. Milking by modality is the next KPI, the next parameter we are measuring. And milking by modality, we talked about it already. This is what we saw right here in the flow rate, the decline, the sharp decline of flow in the middle of milking. And the numbers that we see here is how many cows during each of the session was performing by modality. Remember, the numbers here in this report are all total averages of all the cows that have been through the parlor. The industry gold standard asking that no more than 30% or less of the cow will show by modality. So to be on the good side, we need to see that 30% or less of the cows showing by modality. If we're higher than that, then we have a problem. Red already indicate to you that we have a big problem. And I'm not going to do even calculation because I see that in the night, 623 cow out of 795 perform by modality. In the morning, for example, 566 cows out of 801 performed by modality. So we have a major problem, but we already knew it when we evaluated the flow rate. We saw it right here earlier. This is just another big red flag in our eyes to remember that we need to do something. The next, we're going to do all these 5 titles evaluation together. I first go over them to explain what each one of them means, and then give you the gold standard and then the evaluation. Irregular takeoff means that somebody, a milker, went to the keypads, to the display, and manually, by pushing the button, removed the milking machine of the cow. He didn't wait for the automatic takeoff to kick in and remove it. Manual milking is when somebody, a milker, went in and canceled by pushing that button of cancellation, automatic takeoff. He clicked on that. Once he did that, it's recorded. He cannot undo it. Even if he click manual once, and then later he canceled it by clicking it again and turn it back to automatic, the first click he did is already recorded. So we know, the system knows that it was done. In the old keypads, in the AFI Lite or the AFI Flow, we didn't have this capability, but in the MPC, we do. So in the older version of the systems, if they cancel the automatic takeoff, put it on manual, and then canceled it and allowed the kickoff to come in automatically, we didn't know that, but today we do. Multiple attachment, very simple. Machine was removed from a cow, and the milker went over and reattached the machine. So it count how many times, you see here the numbers, how many times that was done. Here, the night shift, 60 times, and in the afternoon, 50 times, milkers reattached a machine to cows. Unnecessary attachment, it's even more clear and serious. It's once a multiple attachment took place, we measure how much milk was harvested with that additional attachment. And if we had less than 1 kilogram of milk harvested after the additional attachment, we consider it to be unnecessary. And this is how many times this happened. When you do evaluation per session, you click, for example, here on 40 and you double click on it, it will open the 44 times that it happened. Sometimes you see cows that had reattachment performed to them 2 or 3 times. And sometimes you see weird places that at each time it didn't produce more than half a kilogram. And still a milker went back and reattached the machine. The last one is kickoff. Kickoff, it's simple when the machine was removed of the cows when the flow rate was higher than 1 kilogram per minute and was not done by the automatic takeoff or manually removed. And then the shut-off came in and shut it off. What's causing kickoff? If it's real, and I will define real and unreal here to be careful when we're evaluating it. When there are many flies in the summer, causing the cows to be nervous, and they kick the machine off. If we have a lot of first lactation in the parlor, they're not used to be milked, they're very sensitive, and sometimes they kick off. Maybe vacuum problem can affect it. Stray voltage, which happen when the installation crew did not properly grounded the parlor, and that caused the cow to be very, very nervous. By the way, that caused a lot of mastitis as well. But another thing can show suddenly as kickoff if something like, if the milk trap that's sitting right above the receiver is shut off. Let's say that the receiver got filled up with milk and the bowl that floating there going to shut off the vacuum line to prevent the vacuum line from being flooded by milk. That's going to shut off the vacuum in the parlor, at least on one side, and all the machine going to fall. If it's a big parlor, let's say a double 30, for example, then boom, you get 30 machine fall off the cows right in the middle of milking before they were supposed to be removed. That's going to add here 30 to one shift, and that's going to automatically show us a big jump. So before somebody is jumping on the milkers, better ask if something like that happened, and that might indicate the reason for high kickoff in one session. But again, remember guys, in our evaluation, we're looking on 20 days, so something like that cannot affect our number. Only when we're looking on per session, per day data. When we're looking on a 20 or 30 days data evaluation with a sub-summary, this will not affect the numbers. And that is why we're using that evaluation this way. These are the gold standard, and they're very simple. If 5%, if the numbers are 5% or more, so we calculate the percentage of, let's say here, 20 from 795, or 21 from 795, and so on. So if we have more than 5% on each of these, then it's bad. Between 3 and 5% were okay, and under 3%, it's excellent. And what we see here are the results. So irregular takeoff is excellent, manual milking is excellent, multiple attachment, bad. You see, over 5%, it's bad. Unnecessary attachment is okay, and kickoff is excellent. Maybe the unnecessary attachment being okay and multiple attachment being bad give us an indication in another direction that some of the cows don't get milked out properly. Remember, we already concluded that there's a problem with the protocol. So maybe that's why people are reattaching machine so much in this parlor, but this indicate that some of the attachment were necessary. And this is taking us all back to the protocol that is not good, probably. So we already got one answer that we were looking for before. What's the reason of the high low float time? And we looked into one option, manual milking, and the conclusion is not. So remember, to manual milking? No, we are doing excellent on manual milking. Therefore, probably the reason for the low flow time removal being so high probably is in the F2 setting. So let's check the F2. That's where the F2 is located, inside the AFI control. I'm again, remember guys, I'm not expecting you to remember everything and learn everything and to be able to do everything. The goal is to be able to impress a potential customer with our ability to evaluate. So what's the conclusion on F2? The default setting is 20, and right now on this farm, they're set on 18. In a nutshell, in a very, very simple way of explaining how this is working. So basically, we're measuring seconds. What 18 or 20 mean? 18 mean every time the milk meter dumped milk, emptied milk, we right away start measuring second until the next dump. If the next dump took, let's say, place 10 seconds later, we're still okay. 16 seconds later, we're okay. If it took 18 seconds to the next dump, we remove the machine from the cow. That's what this is, the meaning of the number. From our perspective, from our understanding and experience, a farm such as this that is milking 3 times a day, regardless of production guide, if they have even a half decent milking protocol, they shouldn't be higher than, I'd say, 15 seconds. 16 seconds, even farm that milk 2 times a day, if they do a good milking protocol, they should be able to easily go down to 15 or 16 seconds for the F2. Farm that milk 3 times a day, once they achieve a decent or even good milking protocol, they can easily go down even lower to 14 and 13. I saw farm that even go down to 12 seconds for the F2. Remember the beginning, the statement I made at the beginning of my presentation. What's the goal is? To remove the milking machine of the cow as soon as we can. The longer we keep it there unnecessarily, the more damage we're causing the teat end, that going to eventually results in high somatic cell, high bacteria, and more cases of mastitis. So the problem cause for the low flow rate at removal is the high F2 that need to be changed. So let's start summarize our finding from this evaluation of this parlor. The first thing we found was the percent of milk in the first 2 minutes was too low. I even indicated way too low. The goal was 50% or higher, and this farm is running somewhere in the middle of the 30s. So they need to go a lot higher to improve. AMT, actual milking time, the goal is 4.5 minutes or lower for a 3 time a day milking. And here they were way too high. They were above, one shift was at 4.8, the rest of them were 5.2, which is too high. Remember, I pointed that by lowering one, we will make this one go higher, obviously. If we go down to 4.5 minutes, with the same amount of milk, so obviously in 2 minutes, the first 2 minutes, we're going to harvest more milk. Flow rate, remember the major problem we saw there with bimodality between the second section, 15 to 30 seconds, and the third section, 30 to 60 seconds. Instead of flow rate going up, it went down, a typical problematic bimodality. Low flow time was too high, and we already concluded that the main source was the low flow time at removal, and we saw where the problem was with the F2. By modality, remember, flow rate and by modality. Multiple attachment were also too high. So what's the verdict? What we need to do, what we're recommending, generally speaking, to this farm, what they need to do is improve their milking protocol and lower F2 value. Number one, improving milking protocol, easy to read and not so easy to implement. This is the point that the specialists that help the dairyman to perform the evaluation at the first time, and later in life, the application team teach the dairyman to do it on his own so he can see it and do it by himself. The first step is to go out to the milking parlor and watch the milkers and see what they're doing, and then conclude which part of the protocol need to be changed, maybe all of it. But first we need to go out there and see what they're doing before we can recommend something. Lowering F2 value, this is critical, guys. You don't simply go like, say, this farm I said was on 18 and I want them to improve protocol and be able to go down even to 14. You don't simply click on it and move it to 14. That's going to cause a lot of problem to the cows. We need to let the cow adjust to the new setting of the takeoff, the automatic takeoff. So we do it 1 second at a time. So today they are 18. I would click and lower it to 17. You can do it even during milking if you want, and it will take effect in the next milking. Now the farm need to wait between 1 to 2 weeks, allow the cows to adjust to the new value, and after, let's say 10 days, they come back and lower it again from 17 to 16. And then wait another 10 days or 2 weeks, and then lower it from 16 to 15. Waiting 10 days again, and then do evaluation. Don't lower it straight to 14, do evaluation, look on this report again, and see what the numbers are, and how things look, and how things have improved or not, before you keep moving on. Maybe some of the cow had problem, maybe it's a farm that was doing a lot of manual milking, old cows, and the milkers were spoiling the cows, teaching them that they don't need to work hard, that the machine will suck them out. This happened. So be careful, be sensitive on the way you go down. Let's look on a couple example of happy customers. Just picked up here and there a weird looking milking graph. Some of the data here look good, but some of it is not. You can see right here in the middle. Very quickly, we were able to improve them to a better looking graph such as this, or the farm that we saw in the beginning, that we were able to move them from this milk curve to this milk curve. The most important point is that if the farm is cooperative, good milking crew, to improve a milk curve from this look to this doesn't always take a long time. Actually, most of the time doesn't take long time at all. One of the farm I specifically remember from years ago was a 400 cows dairy farm with a double 14 parlor that we work with, and their milk curve look worse than this one. We pointed the problem to the owner right away. He wanted to improve it. The milkers were an excellent crew, and they worked with us, and we start working on Monday with them, and I remember by the end of that week, the curve looked almost perfect already. So I'm not saying that all the time it's going to move so fast, it's going to improve that fast, but what I'm pointing out is that it can be done pretty quickly. Cows respond very fast. Another point that I like to mention is that if we look on the report that we saw before, what I did, I evaluated 20 days data to get a big picture. But once the farm start doing that, they will also be able to look on the daily data the next day. So the dairyman or the manager come to the farm in the morning, you get a few minutes, you sit down and you look on yesterday milking milk curve data, shift by shift, session by session. And you can right away spot differences, changes, irregularity in the actions. What he's doing, let's say he saw that yesterday afternoon shift suddenly jumped up in manual milking numbers. So he called the guys into his office, sit them in front of the monitor and show them the screen and tell them what the hell happened here. What is this? Maybe they have an answer, maybe they don't. They discussed it, whatever manner the owner manager choose to. I'm not teaching him how to manage his people. But two things going to happen. First of all, the manager saw right away, the day after, that something abnormal happened in the parlor. He was able to call his people in and point it out to them. Then the next thing is that they walk out after they've been educated, okay, let's put it this way. They walk out of the office. And guess what the first thing they're going to say to each other the moment they walk out of his office? How the hell did he know? There's no camera in the parlor. He was not there. It was only us. How the hell did he know? So now we have a situation where not only the owner / manager know what happened in the parlor, but also his milkers know that he knows. And now they're going to be more cautious and more careful of doing their job. This is the point that I was trying to deliver, one of the points I was trying to deliver in today's presentation that I hope going to help you promote this as a sales tool when you're going to show the dairymen what a great management tool Afi Farm and the Afi Milk system are to potential customers and also to existing customers when you want to make them happier and encourage them to invest more with us. Thank you. And at this point, I turn to Yoni.
Thank you very much, Amir.
For
Such
any questions.
Yes, thanks a lot, Amir, for such a great and interesting presentation. I can say that even while you were doing a presentation, there was a guy from Ireland that had to send a question during your presentation. So I will ask, first of all, whoever's got questions, please send them. And the first question is from Danny. Would it be possible for the gold standards that you put on your presentation to appear in the report, in the milking efficiency report, especially for new users so they can easily compare the results?
Danny, you're reading my mind. And you know, somebody told me that great mind thinks alike. We already started working on that. And I don't have a commitment from R&D on dates yet. I ran the presentation backwards, as you can see, but if I understand the question properly, actually what Danny is asking is that instead of see here, when he opened the milking bimodality, instead of showing him 623, maybe there will be another title, milking bimodality performance, and it will tell him here percentages, or it will tell him the here regular takeoff, it's going to tell him here 2%, and multiple attachment going to show him here 7%. And this is the goal, that we will have another title, that one of them will be the multiple attachment will show him the number, and another title will be multiple attachment percentage, and the numbers will be colored. So if it will be in the range based on the gold standard, the color will change. So if it's in under 3%, for example, the number will be green. If it will be over 5%, the number will be red, and he will know that he's doing good or bad. I hope that's what he meant to, and this is what we are in the process of doing.
Yeah, that's exactly, I'm sure that's what Danny meant. And also I would add the gold standard that you showed in the beginning for flow rates also, to identify the bimodality in the flow rate.
Yeah, all of
And
them.
give, yeah, exactly. And to
You mean
show,
here.
and yes, that's it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
all of it will be with the
That's it. Yeah, there. That's it. That's where it should be. That they should show straight away the
Yep.
where the problem is, and they could straight away
Right.
pinpoint. Because I agree, and even maybe I would suggest that we should think about it, like you explained, Amir, that we need to open this report up for 20 days in order to see averages. So maybe it's something that we need to also have an option that it should open already with the summaries, so the farmer can straight away see the averages.
As a default, you
And
mean.
yeah, yeah. So no, but that's a good question, and like you said, we hopefully will be in the future. I don't see any more questions coming up. So I just want to say thank you very much again. And thank you everyone for joining us.